بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون صدق الله العظيم. There's a very important principle in the Quran, and that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trains our mind, and Allah trains our bodies and our thoughts, and Allah says get ready for the ultimate day, the day of judgment. On that day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask not us but the limbs of our bodies, the individual limbs, the eyes, the hands, the feet, the nose, that what type of sins that you did. And in exchange of that, the response will be that, oh Allah, I did such and such good or such and such evil. Al-yawma nakhtimu ala afwahihim, very famous verse in the Quran in Surah Yasin. Allah mentions about this principle. I want to pose the same question. I want to ask you, what about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask our phones on the day of judgment? You know where I'm going with this. Now, what if Allah will ask our phones on the day of judgment that what type of good or evil that this phone did through our fingerprints and through our fingertips on the day of judgment? And that's why our topic of today, which is social media. Social media is something that is good and something that is bad as well, right? In Arabic we call it mafasid and masalih. There's masalih in it and there's mafasid in it. I'll give you an example. Sometimes, we see some bugs in our homes, cockroaches, things like that. So we call for pest control. Now pest control has masalih and mafasid. It's good and it's bad. It's good in the sense that it will repel all the insects. It will repel all the cockroaches. But it will also have mafasid, that when they spray it, then you don't want to be anywhere nearby for a couple of hours, right? That's what they tell you. That leave your homes for a couple of hours because it has mafasid in it, right? Somebody might say, there's so much benefits in it that when the pest control comes and they spray my home, I see that the insects are gone. So let me not just put it around the corner of my homes, but let me also spray it on my countertops. Let me also spray it in my food. Let me also spray it, in other parts of the area. So what happens is that when we do that, then it's going to lead to a lot of harms, a lot of evil. In the same manner, social media has masalih and mafasid. When we don't control social media, right? When we don't put a limit, when we don't put a balance to it, then the social media controls us. When instead of controlling that device, when that device controls us, then the device is everywhere. It's just like the pest control. It's everywhere. Then that device is also inside of our homes. We end up using it outside of our homes. We end up using it while we're driving as well. We end up using it while we're sleeping as well. We end up using it while we're having conversation with other people as well. It's everywhere. It's just like spraying that pest control, right? Out of control. That pest control, which is out of control, in the same manner that social media, which we're supposed to control as a human being. Allah gave you mind, Allah gave you aql, Allah gave you brain, Allah gave you time. So you control the device. Instead of controlling the device controls us. So when the device controls us, then it goes out of control. We also go out of control in terms of our time, in terms of our decision making. Right? So it's just like that pest control which is everywhere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran explains to us very important concept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when it comes to khamar, alcohol, there is good and there is bad. But the evil outweighs the bad. Right? So you have to use it according to your understanding. In the same manner, in terms of social media, there is good and there is bad. But the evil outweighs the bad if we don't control it, if we don't use it properly. You can use it in so many good ways, connecting with your families, listening to a good lecture, and giving da'wah and raising money for the brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, wherever. These are all the different platforms that we can use the social media for. But there's also, if we don't, balance it properly, then that device can also control us in terms of falling for haram, in terms of watching things that we're not supposed to watch, in terms of jealousy and addiction and wasting time and all of that. So that's why we have to understand. Number one, what is social media? We say social media. What is social media? Every single one of us, we have phones in our homes, in our pockets. Most of us, we have it. Majority of us, right? Millions and millions of American Muslims who have phones across United States of America and beyond the borders. But what it is that, my dear respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters, are we using those smartphones smartly? Are we using those? Are we making the smart decisions with those smartphones? And that's something that we have to understand. That social media is not just one app. It's not just phone and device that you communicate with others and millions. And it opens up the pathways and opens up the avenues of messages and phone calls and communication. It's not just one app, but it's a combination of most of the apps put together on your mobile phones. It's a combination of website. It's a combination of photos, videos, entertainment, and all of that put together, becomes social media. That includes your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, your WhatsApp, and all of that. And then put together all of that as a majmu'ah, as a summary, as a combination, becomes social media. So when you try to track your phone and you say, okay, how much time am I spending on one app? Don't just look at one app. Look at the combination of all the apps put together and how much of my time is actually being spent on my phone on daily basis. And this is what we have to understand, is that when we use all these devices, right? Be it phone calls, text messages, posting about status and all of that. We think, in my mind, that within a few minutes or a few hours, that post will be gone. It will be seen by millions of people in next 24 to 48 hours, and it becomes an old post, right? Then our brain tricks us, and we want to update our status by putting something else and something else and something else. So constantly we want to update people because that post will get old. But in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will never get old, right? Everything that we say, everything that we do, everything that we utter, and everything that we write on our social media platforms, all of that is recorded in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Allah mentions that no sooner does a son of Adam mention something except that Raqib and Atid. Raqib and Atid is something that not only we're watching you, but we're also recording what you're doing. Raqib and Atid. All of this is being, put into, this is being recorded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the angels, and it will be brought forth on the Day of Judgment. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned a very important principle in the hadith. And he says, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, falyakun khayran aw liyasmut." That he who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in the akhirah, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Say something which is good, otherwise remain silent. Right? Say something which is good, otherwise remain silent. That's why if we don't control our devices and these devices control us, then we might go out of control in terms of saying something that we're not supposed to say, in terms of doing something that we're not supposed to do. Many times, the fastest way to spread rumors within the community, to accuse somebody, is through social media platforms, because at the click of a button, you can reach hundreds and thousands of people. And then next thing you know, we might accuse somebody, or we might speak about somebody negatively, or we might damage the reputation of somebody. All of this we're not understanding, but all of this is being recorded in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another thing, my dear respected brothers, elders, mothers and sisters, is that if we don't control this device will control us and will make us lead to israf. Israf is something that is a very dangerous concept that Allah mentions in the Quran, because Allah mentions that those who waste their hours and their precious moments in their lives, this is something that's never going to come back. You waste an hour, a minute, or a day of your time, it will never come back. A person can be a millionaire and billionaire, but you can never pay money to bring yesterday back. You can never pay money to bring 1 hour that just passed. You can never pay money and bring 1 second and 1 minute that just passed. So social media platforms and these websites, sites, and these mobile apps are very powerful platforms. They're very, very powerful platforms. Some statistics, generally, 84% of the Americans use YouTube, and 71% of Americans use Facebook, and 50% of the Americans use Instagram. And this is generally speaking, from the age of 5 all the way to age of 90. Now, generally speaking, we have something called heavy users. Heavy users are the users between the age of 18 and 29. This is back in the day. But now children, they have phone from a very young age. They don't get phone at the age of 18. They probably get at the age of 17, 16, depending on the parents and the decisions that they make. Some as young as 9, 10 years old have the phone of their own. And smartphone, not just a phone, but a smartphone. So the statistics about them, the heavy users, which is between these ages all the way up to the age of 29, right? About 85% of them use YouTube. These children from the age of 18 to 29. And about 80% of them use Instagram. Ask any youth and youngster, hardly you will ever get a response, no. Do you have an Instagram account? They'll say yes. TikTok account? Most likely yes, because 63% of them. So all of this put together, right? Now, an average American home just doesn't have one device in their home. You just don't have a phone in your pocket. You have a phone, you have a laptop, you have an iPad, you have another laptop, you have another desktop, you have another this, another that. So average American home will have multiple devices, as many as between 5 to 8 devices, depending on the family members that you have in your homes. So can you imagine the amount of distraction it creates? Because you can easily go from one device to another device to another device to another device. So a child, will be stimulated. They'll play video games for a certain amount of times. Okay, they're bored with that. Let me go to a desktop. They'll go to this desktop. They're bored with that. Let me go to a laptop. They'll go to the laptop. Let me come back to the mobile. So it's just a rotation, right, within the homes. All of that, has a direct effect on their mind. All of that has a direct effect on their brain. This is what leads to ADHD and distraction, right? All of this. That's why they're not able to focus. Now then the children, they have a common complaint. The complaint is that, oh, we're bored. Because why? Because hours and hours of stimulation of their mind and of their brain, the instant gratification, the happy dopamine that's released. When they play video games, it's a happy dopamine, it's released. They want another dopamine, a rush of dopamine. So that, another one and another one. Within 1 minute, multiple dopamines are released. So if they play for hours, then those dopamines end up, making them addicted. Addicted to what? Addicted to device. Total opposite of that is our ibadah, right? Because those video games are rush of dopamine. They make children have instant gratification. Total opposite of that is our salah, our khushu, our recitation of the Quran. In recitation of the Quran, there's not a lot of movement. In salah, there's not a lot of movement. In fact, we're told to have khushu and khudu. Try to have the rest of your body, rest of your mind. When you pray salah slowly with focus. Your thana has to be slow. Your qiyam has to be slow. Your ruku has to be slow. Your tasbih has to be slow. Your sajda has to be slow. So the rush of dopamine is not there. When the rush of dopamine is not there, then a person might end up starting salah, but they're not able to complete the task. They might sit with the Quran, but they might not be able to sit with the Quran for a longer period of time. They might be able to pray salah, but they're not able to pray salah for the longer period of time. They might sit with the homework, but they're not able to complete the homework on time. Why? Because that rush of dopamine is not there, which ends up leading towards a silent addiction. We have a loud addiction and we have a silent addiction. Everybody knows what the loud addiction is. Everybody knows what the visible addiction is. Everybody knows what the apparent addiction is, right? But there is something called silent pandemic. There's something called silent epidemic. There's something called silent addiction. And if we're not careful parents and we're not careful users ourselves and we're not creating those boundaries within our homes, then we'll have to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, because it affects not just our children, but the generations to come. Because if most of their time is spent hours and hours on these devices, then where are they going to learn their akhlaq from? Where are they going to learn their adab from? Where are they going to learn their Quran from? Where are they going to learn the respect of parents from? Where are they going to learn how to, build relationship with the families from? Right? All of that. Where are they going to learn? When it's time to eat, then it's time to eat together. When it's time to sleep, then it's time to sleep. Right? So all of these boundaries, we as husbands of the homes, we as parents, we have to learn it ourselves first of all. And second of all, we have to implement it with love, with respect, with mahabba, spending time with them. It's not just, here you go and you figure it out. No, but we take out time from our busy schedule. I know it's tough. I know it's very difficult, but this is something that we'll have to do because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Don't just save yourselves. Don't just worry about your salah. Don't just worry about your masjid. Don't just worry about your recitation of the Quran. You as the breadwinner of the house, you are responsible to maintain the iman, akhlaq and adab and the family ties of your children and of your wives and of your spouses. أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. That's one thing. Being careful users ourselves, not to fall into heavy users. And secondly, children who spend a lot of times on video games, and the video games are built to what sort of create addiction in their minds. We have to be careful ourselves. The most famous video games in the United States of America is number 1, Roblox, number 2, Minecraft, and number 3, Fortnite. All of these games are built to make the child addicted. And when it leads to addiction, then those addictions is something there is no end to it. That's number 1. Number 2, when you create these accounts for these video games, there is no cross-confirmation of age. There is no cross-confirmation of who's coming in, so it leads to social media predators. And the way it leads to social media as predators is strangers who would communicate. Now these video games are not just for playing. Gone are the days where people used to play video games. It's now two-way communication. It's not just playing, but it's also communication. So you're playing as well, but you're communicating with the other user behind the screen. Who's that user? What's his background? What's his age? What's his intention? Unknown. We don't know who that person is. So it could be a social media, and there are cases, and you can go and look it up online and on Google, and these powerful video game tools have the lawyer sitting to back themselves up. So there could be a lawsuit, but then they have the millions and millions of dollars are paid to these lawyers to protect these entities, because that's where the bucks come in. That's where the revenue comes in. Millions and millions of dollars are poured into making the children addicted. A former Facebook CEO said that Facebook was designed, Sean Parker, he said Facebook was designed to make people addicted. So is that just Facebook? No. Same thing with social media. Same thing with TikTok. Same thing with Instagram. Same thing with Twitter. Same thing with WhatsApp and all of that. Right? So we as human beings, we want that instant gratification. So as I mentioned in the beginning, that just as the pest control has masalih and mafasid, in the same manner phones will have masalih and mafasid. So you want to be able to control that. I want to ask you one question before I leave you, inshallah. Allah mentions in the Quran, when it comes to orphans in Surah Nisa, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِ وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَ حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا. When an orphan, their yatim, their parents pass away, then the parents leave some money behind. They leave some assets behind. They leave some property behind. They leave something behind for that child. When is the appropriate time for the guardians to hand over that wealth to the yatim? The Quran mentions that at the age of rushd. Rushd is the age where they're able to make decisions, where they're able to know right from wrong. That is rushd, where they can differentiate between halal and haram. A child who's given a phone at the age of 9 and 10 does not know how to set a boundary. That child does not know what is halal and what is haram. That child does not know what is masalih and what is mafasid. It becomes difficult for adults to differentiate. How can a young child differentiate? So rushdan, that you hand over the wealth of that yatim at the age of rushd, when they're able to make the decision. How can we just hand over phones to our children at the age of 7, 8, 9, and 10? We have to be very careful. If we do, and I'm not saying don't do it and it's haram to do it. If you do it, that is your decision. But remember, if the child goes off track and they're not able to make that decision and they stumble on the website that they're not supposed to stumble on. They end up going to a friendship that they're not end up going to, or they end up talking to a stranger that they're not able to talk to. And these people who are hiding behind the screens, they're very careful in terms of teaching your child when they're playing those video games to disable what? If the parental control is there, you say, oh, you know what? I have a parental control. I can monitor what my child is doing, all of that. But these strangers, they also can teach your children how to disable that parental control, right? So I'll leave you with one question. When a stranger comes into your home, you'll be like, oh, this is a stranger, uninvited guest. I did not invite you. How can you as an ajnabi come in my home? I did not invite you. In the same manner, when we end up accessing these social media platforms, we're actually giving access to our children to the millions and millions of people. These are millions and millions of ajnabis, and one intruder can come into that app and intrude that social media platform. We might not be aware of it, we might not even know, and this could be going on for months and months and years. So the point of today's khutbah is, let's become a careful user ourselves, and let's become careful parents so that we can make better decisions for our children and our family members.